Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint 208 review. This is a normal 2-week sprint ending on March 20th, and let's begin. I'll start with the overview, Melody on the UI, Adam on providers, Joe on the platform, and Keenan on the API. As you can see, Sprint 208 was very similar to the last sprint, pretty typical, with 24 bugs and 24 enhancements. And over to Melody on the UI.
Yeah, for sure. So in the UI repo, we merged 21 PRs this time around. And thank you. So one of the first PRs that we merged, Jeffrey converted the settings map tag page to React. Akil converted the live migration page, form to React. Akil also converted the evacuate form to React. Amal converted the configuration diagnostic server summary page to React. Dinesh converted the settings summary schedule page also to React. And Dinesh also converted the user summary page to React. There was a lot of converting to React this time around. Moving on to bugs, I fixed a bug where the dropdown was incorrectly displaying only one option rather than all of them. Jeffrey fixed a bug where the summary label was wrapping strangely. David fixed a bug that was causing the tabs in the service summary page to not display correctly. Jeffrey worked on a bug where certain pages would show the above error if the user did not have proper access, rather than the correct error pop up below. Akil fixed the bug in the schedule form where certain dropdowns needed to be selected twice to be set, and some dropdowns would reset others. I fixed a bug in the link component so that it would allow labels to work in using both href and on-click events. Jeffrey fixed a bug that was causing the group switching dropdown to be cropped and harder to use. Jeffrey also fixed a bug where the genealogy comparer on the selected items was missing. And he also removed an empty column from the data tables component. Moving on to some miscellaneous fixes that we had, Jason bumped up the Canis Lite version in our package.json. Joe added a banner to better identify the default error handler, and he also updated some of the JSON files regarding translations. Joe also updated the UI Classic repo workflow to catch security issues more efficiently, and Dinesh converted some backticks back to single quotes to fix a security issue. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Melody. So this sprint, we added a storage service object to the list of acceptable refresh targets. This made it simpler for the AutoSDE team to do some targeted refresh work in their provider, which we'll get to later. They also added the core CRUD methods for Cloud Volume snapshots, along with a number of supports methods. They're working on Cloud Volume snapshots in their own provider, but we're noticing that when they went to do this through the API, that a number of the core expected supports methods were missing, and so they were going through and fixing that up for us, which is nice. We added a refresh target method, which makes it simpler to override what's being refreshed in child EMS refresh workflow classes. And LJ also dropped some remaining SCVMM and Hyper-V references in core that we missed when we first removed the provider. For AutoSDE, they're queuing targeted refreshes after deleting a storage service instead of just doing a full. This was allowed to be done based on the previous mentioned PR. They also added the ability to select storage resources when you're creating a storage service. And they also added system type to the physical storage asset details. They wanted to show the type of physical storage on the UI, and luckily the existing UI had support for displaying asset details, which was brought in by the Lenovo provider. And so they just had to set those, and it automatically was showing up on the UI for them. And they also added the ability of passing capabilities selected by the UI when they're creating a physical storage. Next slide. For Azure, we found that there was an unused VCR cassette that was there from when we had support for 2 different types of refresh, and they had their own VCRs. But when we switched over to only using graph refresh, we forgot to delete the old VCR cassette. Really just have this in here because it was like 15,000 lines of deletions, and I want to make LJ jealous. For IBM CIC, we added service catalog provisioning support. So a subclass of the OpenStack provisioning workflow so that you can use the service catalog when provisioning a CIC VM. For IBM Cloud, Joe fixed an issue where we're requiring the logging gem as opposed to logger, which was causing him some issues when moving over to Zeitwerk. We really don't need a separate IBM Cloud logger since for that particular class, because there already is one. So future work is going to be deleting this entirely, but for now it's at least unblocks them there. Next slide. And for OpenStack, Melody added DDF parameters for updating OpenStack infra ironic hosts. This is part of the work to move to using the API and React for updating the host edit dialogues. And we also allowed for overriding of the provision workflow by inherited providers. This is what allowed us to do the IBM CIC thing from the previous slide. For OpenStack, Keenan made a change to the core verify credentials for hosts, which allowed us to delete a couple of essentially copied methods in the providers, and this is one of them. Melody also added DDF params for the overt and rev hosts, and we on the Protrojan branch are stopping the OVN event catcher from running. This is due to not having proper services on the rev side to be able to support an OVN network event catcher, but it requires a schema change on master. And so for Protrojan, we're just shortcutting and stopping the event catcher from running so you don't have a worker that's just starting and then failing and then starting again. For VMware, Melody finished up the trifecta of infra hosts with VMware ESX hosts for DDF params for create. And we bumped the VMware Web Service gem to bring in some fixes for smart state analysis that were fixed over there. And that is it for providers. Over to Joe.
Okay, for the platform enhancements, Hero improved charting by adding a mechanism to present charts with the relevant storage unit based on the data. Jason improved our Ansible runner environment to properly detect Python paths instead of using hard-coded values. I added a virtual delegate for some common event stream timeline columns, basically the host name, EMS name, and VM name. As Adam mentioned, I removed some Hyper-V references that were missing when we removed that provider. Keenan improved the guides for dev setup by not specifying the locale when creating the database. Jason added the DNF option no best to deal with the issues with the Ansible 5.6 upgrade. And Jason removed an old Brakeman patch needed for including our engines in Brakeman scans. And that was no longer needed because the patch was done upstream. But then he realized we needed another patch in order to run from the engines themselves. So he added that. Next slide, please. For bugs, Frank fixed a few translation bugs. Jason had a backportable tactical fix for that Ansible runner enhancement I mentioned previously. Jason also forced our gem file to use the newer Rack and Rails version to deal with multiple CVEs. And Jason fixed a code scanning warning by using file read instead of IO read. Brandon fixed build issues with Go 1.20. And Jason fixed the sporadic test failure and the database replication specs. That's it for the platform.
Great. So on the API front, we added verify credentials to host so that can be used in the UI for Melody's host page. Also found an issue with providers for verify credentials. So now it works. Sorry. We added also our guy, I'm sorry, I don't know his first name, added options for the storage service so that dynamic fields, DDF, dynamic forms would work correctly. On the testing front, Jason got in 2 patches. The API was failing in cross repo. So he got in to fix both in this repo and also in the cross repo. So that big hit there. LJ added a security suite to the API, and I thought some other repos as well, so that the Brakeman scans will work properly over in the API. And then just a minor fix so that we don't have corruption cross tests for settings. There, on to Jason for the rest.
All right, and that's it for the Sprint 208 review. The next Sprint 209 review will be on April 5th at the usual place and time. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone in the community for helping out and fixing or finding issues so we could fix them, to our team members doing all the fixes, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.